today's show, despite the Capitals' struggles as of late, they're still one of the best teams in the NHL, and John Carlson proving to everyone why he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals' unexpected great season. And what do I mean when I say unexpected? That everyone around the league said the Capitals made some moves in the offseason, but those moves aren't going to pay off for them. That despite the Capitals' struggles as of late, they are still one of the best teams in the NHL. How are they getting it done? I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about John Carlson's recent milestone and proving that he's not one of the best Capitals defensemen ever, but one of the best defensemen, period. We'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, we'll talk about shootout troubles with this team minus Evgeny Kuznetsov and TJ Oshie. But just to get it going here, if you are an everydayer of the show, you know, oftentimes here as of late, I've talked about the struggles with this team scoring 5-on-5. I've talked about Spencer Carbery's concern about this team, that it's, you know, maybe not playing as well as it was to start the season. But if we really want to get a 30,000-foot view of this team, they're still a really great team. And only the Vegas Golden Knights have put up more points than the Capitals have as I record this on Thursday. So let's gain a perspective here a little bit, Capitals fans, that there are teams out there that were really, really good last season. I'm talking about you, New York Rangers. I'm talking about you, Islanders, some of these other teams, Boston Bruins, that sometimes how things are projected and sketched out to start the season aren't actuality. I had actually thought that the Rangers would be the best team in the Metro. Where are they now? In last place. So let's gain a perspective and let's talk about some of the things that are working for the Capitals and ultimately how they are getting it done. It's clear the Capitals have had quite a ride so far. After, you know, you take a look at it, last year's disappointing first round sweep by the Rangers in the playoffs. There was a lot of questions about, is GM Brian McClellan the right guy for the job? Was Spencer Carbery the right guy for the job? There were a lot of question marks hanging over the team. And one of the biggest questions this season, of course, is Alex Ovechkin and his pursuit of Wayne Gretzky. Important, of course. Do I think he's going to catch him this year? Yes, with a caveat, as long as he can stay healthy. So what's the big turnaround with this year versus last year? You wouldn't believe what a turnaround we're seeing. As of January 9th, the Capitals are sitting atop of the Metro in Eastern Conference with a stellar record of 27-10-4. Again, as I record this on Thursday, totaling 58 points. It's amazing how quickly things can change. You know, and I did that crossover episode with Locked On hosts, and I picked the Rangers in first place, and I made a bold take, and I said the Capitals in second place, and every other host snickered to themselves a little bit and said, Dan, we don't know how to tell you. Maybe you want to cover your ears, but the Capitals, despite those moves that they got, they're not going to be that good. Well, who's laughing now? Ha, ha, ha. Now, Ovechkin's pursuit. Ovechkin has been an absolute force this year. Great start. Had a hat trick, 2 goals, and then the injury that was sustained by Jack McBain, kind of a lower leg hit. I was going to say knee on knee, but it was a lower leg left fibula. Then it was a scary moment. What kind of Ovechkin were we going to see? How much time was he going to miss? That kind of thing. And when he makes his return, well, what kind of player are we going to see? But now, netting 19 goals in just 25 games, despite that broken leg, he's currently on pace to chase down Gretzky's record of 894, needing just 23 more goals to surpass the great one Can we believe that we're talking about this? And again, I was talking with one of the guys at Locked On, one of the managers there, and we're going to do an episode. I'm going to do an episode, but he also talked about having some of the other Locked On hosts as well, talking about that. We'll probably talk about some of the great Alex Ovechkin moments. So expect at some point after he passes and catches and passes Gretzky that there'll be some content surrounding that, of course. And it's amazing how quickly things can change. Just about this team, about Alex Ovechkin, who got off to his slowest start in the goal scoring department in his entire career last season before the All-Star break, that to never count out the big man. But so we know that Ovechkin's playing well. And I think that to say Ovechkin's behind the Capitals' success would be painting it with an extremely broad brush. We're talking about a supporting cast and a guy that was brought in to replace Nick Backstrom. I don't think that was ever the initial plan, but that's what it's turned into. And that's Dylan Strome, who has racked up 45 points with 12 goals and 33 assists and has been the one for the most part setting up Alex Ovechkin this year, kind of picking up the torch from where Nick Backstrom left off. But there's the kind of the unexpected things. And, there's a thing about being optimistic, of course. I knew that Alexei Protas was a good player, but his game has definitely grown by leaps and bounds this year with 36 points. Pierre-Luc Dubois chipping in with 33. Tom Wilson, Connor McMichael, both contributing significantly. That this is a team that has scoring up and down the lineup. One of the things that I said worked well for the Rangers last year is they had scoring up and down the lineup. Last year's Capitals, not the case. A bit of a one-trick pony, if you will, and they were exposed in the playoffs. Going to be a lot different of a team in the postseason this year. Now, with a total of 150 goals scored over 41 games, the Caps ranked second in the league in offensive production, averaging 3.66 goals per game. Can you believe it? This team that everyone talked about the negative goal differential last year, getting it done. And, so that's the offense, but it's the defense and the net minding, and how Logan Thompson is proving to be just an absolute steal and a stroke of genius by former GM Brian McClellan. 17 wins, 2 losses, and 2 OT losses, with a 2.32 goals against average and a 919 save percentage. On the other hand, there's Lindgren, who's been consistent and inconsistent, contributing with 10 wins and a 2.70 goals against. The confidence in the net minding is showing for the team. I would say a little bit more for LT than Charlie, but again, I hear the negative comments. I'm not saying that Charlie's season is squashed. I'm just saying that the last few games have not been some of his best. So I think that there is confidence within the net minding for the Capitals, whether it's on the big team, the number 1 and number 2, or whether it's the number 3 or 4, Hunter Shepard, Clay Stevenson, that I think that they are well covered. But another thing that I don't want to get lost in all of this is head coach Spencer Carbery, who has to be, one of the front runners for Coach of the Year. His ability to motivate while keeping the atmosphere light has been critical to their own success. You take a look at Peter Laviolette. He got results to an extent, but he was gruff, he was rough, and you don't see, kind of what Spencer Carbery does if you are on Capital Social, where it's kind of a gathering of the troops in the locker room, and he'll point out to the great things and just give the credit to the players. He's definitely a younger coach that has more of a rapport, and what he says resonates more with a younger team to an extent. So Spencer Carbery, I stand by my statement, is the absolute perfect coach for this team. I don't think they made a mistake. I don't think that there's any other guy that would do a better job. Spencer Carbery is the absolute perfect coach for this team, despite struggles. The thing I love the most about Spencer Carbery is he is not afraid of mixing things up. And I think that has really helped this team. And he's doing an excellent job harnessing the potential of this roster, taking PLD's game to the next level. That was one of his missions, a mission that some people thought was a mission impossible. He is doing that, the impossible. Now, as we look ahead, the Capitals have an exciting road. As I record this on Thursday, all is well in the Capitals world. No major injuries. We see Sonny Milano edging closer and closer to return. Dylan McElrath was ill. Those kind of things, but no substantial injuries. Nothing that's going to change the current trajectory. So a lot to be excited about, Capitals fans, is this team is definitely firing on all cylinders. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about number 74, John Carlson, and how he is not one of the best defensemen just for the Capitals, but one of the better defenders to ever lace up the skates. Let's talk about John Carlson next. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need to place live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And as we edge closer and closer to the NFL playoffs, it's good to have vested interest. So whether it's the Commanders, whether it's the Ravens, if you want to have vested interest in any of the games, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, they got that much more exciting. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this segment here, we're going to talk about John Carlson and a milestone somewhat recently. He is one of the kind of unsung heroes in the NHL. If you are a Capitals fan, of course, you know what he means to this team. One of the best defenders, a guy that can log mega minutes, not complain, and not lose a step. We take a look at last season where he was logging around 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes a night, and there was no dip. There was no decline. And that is truly what makes him better than a lot of the other defenders in the league. I mean, you could put anyone in there and put him in 25 to 30 minutes, but are you going to get the production that you get from number 74? You're just not going to do it. Now, he has been on a bit of a goal-less drought as of late, but all things considered, his career is going to make him one of the best Capitals and one of the best NHLers on the blue line in particular. And he had a somewhat recent milestone of 700 points. And that happened in the game against the Buffalo Sabres, contributing 2 assists in that 4-3 shootout loss. Okay, I don't want to talk about that. But the historical context, Carlson's impact on the franchise has been huge. This accomplishment is monumental not only for Carlson personally, but for the Capitals franchise. As the all-time leader in goals, assists, and points among defensemen for the team, he has now become one of only 31 defensemen in NHL history to hit the 700-point mark. That's what I'm talking about. Sometimes when you think of some of the better guys in the NHL, maybe you don't think of John Carlson because he's not one of the showboaters. He's not Alex Ovechkin from his youth, but just kind of quietly in a lot of ways goes about his business. If you poke him, he has a bit of snarl to his game, but all things considered, John Carlson is a standout defenseman. Not a lot of snarl in his game, but I have seen John Carlson get a little animated, shall we say, from time to time. So taking a look and reflecting on that achievement after the game, Carlson shared his pride, talking about the achievement, crediting his teammates, kind of like Nick Backstrom, taking a big bite of humble pie, saying that, quote, "I've been lucky enough to play on a great team my whole career with great players," unquote, showcasing the sense and camaraderie that he feels with his team. And, that's what I would say as well. I mean, you would have to be a real fill in the blank kind of person to go, yeah, I guess I'm pretty good, ain't I? But John Carlson, just the last couple of years has really shown what he means to this team. That last year in particular, and then you saw the impact the season before when he took that puck against Winnipeg and was bleeding and all that kind of thing, that he missed some substantial time, that you could really sense what he meant and means to this franchise. So John Carlson is definitely one of the best. And his on-ice performance since the 17-18 season, Carlson has been what I'm going to say an essential asset, ranking 8th in the NHL for average ice time, logging an impressive 24:34 per game. That's quite stunning. And if you've ever played hockey, I did a bit in my youth. It's tough, and when you're, the armchair general sitting on your couch at home, you're like, well, this guy's not doing this or that right. Go lace up the skates out there and do it. It's pretty tough. And to be an elite level NHL blue liner like John Carlson is stunning. His skills extend beyond the defense. He does have that offensive flair, game changer offensively with over 23,000 minutes of play. He effectively manages various game responsibility and is a leader in the locker room. And they're looking for that. When Alex Ovechkin was out of the mix, that it was Tom Wilson, John Carlson, these kind of guys that were the veteran leaders in the locker room getting it done. But talking about teammate support and recognition, the reaction to Carlson's achievement has been, one of those heartwarming stories of the season, with teammates and fans showing their support on social media. And I take a look at Tom Wilson. Of course, he knows what he means. Dedication, saying, quote, he's been a horse for us for so long and a leader in the locker room, unquote, highlighting his respect, that not only is he respected by the fans, the coaches, but also his fellow players, which I think really speaks volumes of not only what kind of player he is, but what kind of man he is in general. So just to honor that milestone, the Caps have a special pregame ceremony lined up against the Utah Hockey Club on February 9th. So it will be a special moment paying honor to number 74, John Carlson, his great career. And, he's not, a lot of those players, they're getting a little bit up there. They're getting older. They're not as young as they once were. And sometimes you take certain things for granted. I think that, at least to a certain extent, I think as Capitals fans, we take for granted what John Carlson means to this team. In this episode, I hope to highlight exactly what he means for the Capitals. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about something that the Capitals are struggling with, and something that's a bit foreign to them struggling in this regard, and that is success on the shootout. They've had Evgeny Kuznetsov, TJ Oshie, some of the better players to ever perform on the shootout. But what do they do now? I'll discuss straight ahead. Going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert I went to last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now, Game Time hasn't made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And that is the frustrating part. Your favorite band comes to town, your favorite sporting team is playing, and what is the view of the stage going to be like? What is the view of the playing surface going to be like? Take all of that guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. It is a lifesaver. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this last segment here, we are going to talk about one of the things that the Capitals need to work on this season. There's not a lot. We've talked about their struggles in 5-on-5, the power play, the PK, those kind of things, but the shootout. Well, the shootout is something that the Capitals haven't had to do a whole lot this year. I'm thinking here back to the Minnesota Wild game in particular, and one other game that escapes my mind off the top of my head that they struggled and they ultimately lost in the shootout. It's something that for quite some time they had the luxury of a really great talent in two players in particular. I'm talking of Evgeny Kuznetsov, who had that really slow entry, really, really slow-mo entry and had great effectiveness. And then you take a look at TJ Oshie, another guy that performed very well in that situation. So now that the Capitals are in a unique position that they've struggled on the shootout, and how do they plan on changing it? It is a bit of an interesting situation for the Capitals to face, and ultimately, how do they plan on changing it? How do they plan on addressing it so we don't have to talk about how this team is struggling on that yet again? So that is what we're going to talk about in this segment, the shootout struggles. We're going to dive into a topic in the minds of Capitals fans everywhere, the team's struggle in the shootout. A turn for the worse. The Capitals were once known for their top-notch shootout performance in the NHL, but lately, things have taken a turn for the worse. On January 2nd, we witnessed a heartbreaking 4-3 shootout loss to the Sabres, who, let's face it, are currently sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But one of the things we know about the Eastern Conference and the Sabres is that despite the fact that they're not ranked too well right now, that if they could really kind of turn on the Jets, they could turn around their fortunes and get back into contention. That marked the Capitals' second shootout loss in 3 games. And I think that Spencer Carbery has this team well prepared for virtually everything, but he doesn't have it well prepared for the shootout. And it's puzzling to see, given how they hadn't seen a shootout in some time earlier this season, that why did they struggle? And I think that if I'm going to guess, it's because it's one of the things that they haven't practiced a whole lot. They've practiced on 5-on-5, power play, PK, that thing. I think they really need to spotlight and drill down on the shootouts. Now, part of the struggles can be, like I said, attributed to TJ Oshie and Evgeny Kuznetsov. As we remember, Oshie ranked 4th in the NHL history with 49 shootout goals. As we remember, TJ Oshie, the back problems, is going to spend the last year under contract on the LTIR. They're definitely missing him, dealing with that persistent back pain. And Kuznetsov, who added that ultra slow-mo entry, had 29 shootout goals to his name. As we know, went to the Hurricanes and subsequently to the KHL with SKA St. Petersburg. And the Capitals miss him. They don't miss a whole lot, I guess I'm going to say, about Evgeny Kuznetsov. And I don't mean to diminish what he did for this team, but all things considered, the shootout, his last tenure with the Capitals, or the last couple seasons, is what really stood out. So head coach Spencer Carbery has now faced with a challenge of crafting a new shootout strategy, but so far it's been a rough start. The Caps have only scored once in 7 shootout attempts this season. And I think that they're going to have to work on that and practice about finding the right player that is going to pick up the torch, for an Evgeny Kuznetsov, a TJ Oshie. You take a look at it, take the January 2nd matchup against the Wild. Carbery chose Dylan Strome as the first shooter, despite his low success rate with just 2 goals and 13 attempts. Don't usually question Spencer Carbery's judgment, but that is a bit of a head scratcher. And unfortunately, that didn't work out, as he, along with PLD and Alex Ovechkin, came up empty. So they definitely need to fix that. And speaking of Ovechkin, he's now 0 for his last 11 shootout attempts. Surely there can be someone else in the mix that's going to give them better results. That's not the kind of stat we want to see from Ovechkin. But as long as he continues to score goals on the regular, I guess we won't hold that against him. So let's talk about fast forward against the game against the Sabres. Dubois managed to light the lamp in the first round, but the team still couldn't secure the win. So PLD has had some success there, and John Carlson, usually reliable, also had the chance, but fell short. And let's not forget that Sonny Milano has been sidelined with an upper body injury for most of the season. So it's one of the things that they're going to have to find a guy and make it their skill set. While Dubois brings valuable experience to the table, there's definitely a call for Carbery to reassess his shooter choices. So you take a look at it with consecutive shootout losses piling up, start giving some fresh, younger talent like Connor McMichael and Jacob Vrana, or I guess you could say Ivan Miroshnichenko, a crack at it. Maybe make that one of their specialty things, and that would definitely help the Capitals in one of these kind of special situations. So What do the Capitals do going forward? Just that. I think that we know what doesn't work. We know what Alex Ovechkin is strong at. He's good at finding the back of the net, but he's not particularly good defensively and not really good in the shootout. So if we have that knowledge, then just like everything else that has to do with Spencer Carbery, I think the important thing is not to keep doing it. Just because Alex Ovechkin can, score goals on the PP and 5-on-5 does not mean that he is going to be the right guy in the shootout. And the stats, the back of his hockey card indicate that. And it's kind of like, finding a good punter or, something of that nature, a good field goal kicker that sometimes, it kind of seems insignificant until it isn't. Imagine if the Capitals would have won the game against the Wild or the Sabres, those kind of things. So Spencer Carbery has this team, ready for most every scenario. That is something that I think he really needs to drill down on and address, whether it's Connor McMichael, Jacob Vrana, Ivan Miroshnichenko. I don't really care who it is, just so they can find someone that can find the back of the net in those kind of nail-biting, high-pressure situations. Spencer Carbery has done that this entire season, crafting this team into one of the best in the NHL. Just one of the things I think he really needs to tweak. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.